My name is Eli Tran, and last Friday, I walked into my old high school for the first time in 12 years, dressed in an off-the-rack blazer and holding a USB drive in my pocket. The school hadn't changed much. New paint job, sure, a fancier sign out front. But the smell of cafeteria pizza and floor wax still hit me like a memory I didn't ask for. It was the annual Alumni Day, one of those polished, camera-ready events where successful graduates came back to inspire the next generation. Except no one really expected me to show. Hell, most of them probably didn't remember I even went here. I wasn't on the fancy promo flyer, no slick headshot, no pre-announcement from the student council. I'd only agreed to present because the principal asked quietly off the record, said they were short a speaker and could use someone real. So I walked into the auditorium alone. Most of the seats were full students, faculty, and a row of former classmates who'd somehow only gotten louder with age. Laughter echoed as someone scrolled through TikTok. A few wore blazers like they were prepping for Shark Tank. I kept my head down and took the last open seat near the AV setup. 10 minutes later, they called my name. Just Eli Tran, no title, no intro, no applause. I climbed the stairs, plugged in my USB, and clicked to the first slide. Black text, white background, no animations, just me and 5 simple bullet points about failure, focus, and getting unstuck when life punches you in the gut. A few snickers rippled through the crowd. One girl whispered to her friend. A guy in the back muttered, "Seriously, this looks like a middle school project." I heard it, loud and clear. They were expecting TED Talk polish. I gave them word art realness. But I didn't flinch. I didn't shrink. Because what they didn't know was I wasn't there to impress them. I was there to tell the truth. As I stood at that podium, staring into a sea of half-interested faces, all I could think about was how familiar this feeling was. Being overlooked. Yeah, I was an expert at it. Back in high school, I wasn't the funny one, or the loud one, or the one with a fresh pair of sneakers every semester. I was just the weird, quiet kid who wore hand-me-down polos and sat in the back of every class, pretending not to hear the jokes whispered 2 rows over. My mom worked 2 jobs. My dad wasn't around. I packed my lunch in a reused grocery bag and learned early how to keep my head down. When the cafeteria laughed at me for bringing rice and leftover fish, I stopped eating lunch in public altogether. I ate in the library instead, next to the outlet where I could charge my borrowed Chromebook. I remember once, in 10th grade, I entered a school science fair with this clunky solar water purifier I built out of scrap parts and an old projector lens. I was proud of it. Thought maybe it'd earn me some respect. People laughed, said it looked like a broken toaster that threw up. The winning project that year, Madison Wells's volcano that literally exploded and triggered the fire alarm. She got a standing ovation and a gift card to Chipotle. Me, I got a sympathy nod from Mr. Reynolds, the science teacher, and a quiet, "Nice try." That was my high school career in a nutshell. Nice try. I didn't go to prom. Didn't win superlatives. My senior quote was blank because nobody asked me to submit one. The yearbook committee cropped me out of the debate team photo. I wasn't even in the group chat. And the thing is, I wasn't angry back then. Just numb. Like I knew, on some level, that this place wasn't built for people like me. I wasn't charismatic. I wasn't rich. I didn't have the right haircut or the right jokes or the right last name, but I had something they couldn't see. Time. While they were busy curating Snapchats and crushing on each other, I was teaching myself to code from a busted Kindle Fire. I built my first chatbot before most of them could spell Python. I didn't flex it because no one cared. I just kept building, quietly, persistently, like a tree growing underground. Back in the auditorium, I clicked to the next slide. No transition effects. Just another plain white screen with black text, the 3 times I failed before I figured it out. A few students in the front row smirked. One leaned over and whispered something behind their hand. I saw a phone rise up to take a photo of the screen. A quiet chuckle rippled down the row like a chain reaction. One of my old classmates, Caleb Rhodes, let out a low whistle and muttered, "Throwback to 2006 PowerPoint." They didn't even try to hide it. I scanned the crowd, phones out, eyes glazed. The kind of audience that came looking for fireworks and got a fire drill. It stung. I won't lie. For a second, I felt like I was 16 again, standing next to my scrap metal science project while the crowd gathered around someone else's sleek, store-bought display. My hands started to sweat. I thought about skipping the rest, just saying, "Thanks for your time," and walking off stage. Pretend it never happened. Let them have their laugh. But then I saw one kid near the back. Glasses, hoodie, sitting alone. He wasn't laughing. He was locked in, watching, listening. And just like that, I remembered why I said yes in the first place. I took a breath and kept going. I failed my first startup. I said into the mic, burned through all my savings, lived off frozen dumplings for 3 months, cried in the shower, still coded 8 hours a day. The room shifted slightly. Less whispering, more attention. I failed again after that. I continued. Tried to build something during COVID. It tanked. I got rejected by every investor I met. I kept going. Now a few heads tilted, phones lowered, even Caleb shut up. I clicked again. Final slide. The third one worked. That was it. No logo, no name, just 5 words. Because I didn't need to prove anything to the people who used to laugh, and I definitely didn't need their applause now. I was there for the kid in the hoodie, the one I used to be. The funny thing about keeping your head down for most of your life is you get used to not needing attention. That's why I kept it simple today. No designer slides, no fun facts about my hobbies, just the truth, because the truth was loud enough. After high school, I left Texas with a secondhand suitcase, a partial scholarship, and $183 in my checking account. I didn't know anyone at my college. Didn't even know what I'd major in. But I knew one thing: I was done waiting for someone else to notice me. So I got to work. I took every job I could find: library tech support, dorm desk shifts, even cleaned classrooms at night. And in between all that, I built, quietly, relentlessly. My 3rd year, I launched an app for remote learning, a side project. I started to help a friend's little brother who couldn't afford tutoring. The UI was rough. The code was messy. But it worked. Then COVID hit, and suddenly, every school in the country was scrambling for online tools. My app wasn't pretty, but it was free, fast, and didn't require parents to download 15 different logins. Word got around. By the time I graduated, over 200,000 students had used it. I didn't get VC funding. I didn't go viral, but I didn't need to. I licensed it to several districts, reinvested everything, scaled up, brought on a small team, and I kept my name out of the press. I didn't want headlines. I wanted results. Today, that little side project is a full-scale platform serving schools in 7 states. That's how I ended up back here at the school that laughed at my thrift store shoes, asking me to speak to a generation of kids being told they're not enough. That's also how your school got its brand new innovation lab, the one with the 3D printers, the VR kits, the robotics center. Yeah, that was me. Anonymous donation. No ribbon-cutting ceremony. No plaque. Just a quiet thank you email from the principal and a 1-line request. Would you be willing to speak at our next alumni event? I said yes. Not because I needed redemption, but because I wanted some quiet kid in the back to know being invisible doesn't mean you're not powerful. And when I said those words to the auditorium, the energy changed. No more chuckles, no more whispers, just stillness. The kind of stillness that happens when truth lands like a brick in the middle of a polished room. As I finished speaking, I closed my laptop slowly and stepped away from the mic. No bow, no performative pause. I didn't need it. There was a strange stillness in the air, like the whole room had stopped breathing for a second. Even the students who had been scrolling TikTok now sat up straighter, unsure of how to respond. Then the principal walked up on stage, Mr. Ramirez. Still had the same soft voice and tired eyes I remembered from years ago. Back then, he'd once quietly handed me a meal card when I skipped lunch for the 4th day in a row. Never made a scene. Just slipped it into my locker with a Post-it note that said, "Stay fueled." Now, he adjusted the mic and said, "Before we move to our next speaker, I want to take a moment to say something that should have been said earlier." He looked at me, then back at the audience. Most of you know that this school recently opened a brand new innovation lab. It's something we've dreamed about for over a decade: technology, robotics, equipment that puts our students on equal footing with the rest of the country. Students murmured. A few nodded. Everyone knew about the lab. It had become the school's crown jewel. What most of you don't know, he continued, is that we didn't get it through grants or district money or a corporate sponsor. He paused. We got it through one person's private donation, someone who asked for no credit, no name on the building, no ceremony. Now the murmuring stopped completely. That person, he said, is the speaker you just saw. He turned and looked directly at me. Elitran, there was a beat of pure silence. Then it hit them. The kid with the plain slides. The quiet voice. The one they barely noticed walking in. I heard someone gasp. Another person whispered, "Wait, what?" Phones dropped. Eyes turned. And for the first time in my life, in that room, no one laughed. No jokes, no side eyes, just faces suddenly unsure of themselves. Mr. Ramirez clapped, slowly, purposefully, and one by one, they followed. Hesitant at first, then louder, not out of pity, not even really out of admiration, but out of disbelief. The applause wasn't for a performance. It was for a truth they hadn't seen coming. And it was the quietest kind of justice I've ever felt. After the applause died down, the next speaker was introduced some guy in finance wearing a blazer too tight for his ego, but most people weren't listening. They were still stealing glances at me. When the event wrapped, I barely had time to pack up my laptop before the first one approached. "Eli, Matt, that was... wow," Caleb said. Suddenly, all smiles. "I always knew you'd do something big." I blinked. "You used to call me Eli Dial-Up." He laughed too hard. "Just jokes, bro. You know how high school was." Yeah, I knew exactly how it was. A couple more followed. People who hadn't said a word to me in years. They asked for my LinkedIn, my business card. One even asked if I was hiring. Madison Wells herself came up and said, "So?" "The Innovation Lab. That's you. That's like amazing. I volunteer there now." You know, I just smiled, cool. Because here's the thing, when you've been invisible long enough, you can see straight through people. They weren't here to reconnect. They were here to rebrand their past, trying to erase the fact that they once laughed at the version of me who didn't have a shiny success story attached. But I didn't owe them anything. Not bitterness, not revenge, not even a follow back. A few people were different, genuine. One old English teacher pulled me aside and whispered, "They never saw you coming, but I did." That meant something. But for the most part, it was just noise. Performative handshakes, vague compliments, people trying to stand near me like success might rub off if they were close enough. I nodded. I smiled. I kept it polite. But I didn't stay long, because the point wasn't to impress them. The point was I made it without their applause, without their help. And I didn't need to stick around for the part where they rewrote the story to make themselves feel better about how they'd treated me. I slipped out through the side hallway while most of the crowd gathered near the auditorium doors, chatting and posing for photos beneath a vinyl banner that read, "Investing in the future starts here." Yeah, sure. The halls looked smaller than I remembered. The lockers had been repainted, but some of the dents were still there. I passed my old homeroom room 204 where I once got mocked for bringing in a laptop with missing keys. Back then, I used to imagine walking out of this place and never looking back. And yet here I was, walking through it one last time just to say goodbye. Not to people, to the part of me that used to care what they thought. My car was parked across the street. Same spot my mom used to wait in when she worked a night shift and couldn't afford gas for both directions. I got in, closed the door, and let the silence settle. No music, no rush. Just that rare moment when you truly know that you've outgrown something. Not out of spite, but because you're finally too big for the space they kept trying to shrink you into. My phone buzzed. A few LinkedIn requests, a message from the principal thanking me again, and one text from Caleb. Hey man, seriously. Would love to catch up sometime. Hit me up. I didn't respond. Not because I was mad, but because closure doesn't always need a conversation. Sometimes it's just getting in your car, pulling out of the parking lot, and realizing you're done. No need to prove anything. No need to wait for them to understand. They never did. And now it no longer mattered. The next morning, I was back in my world. Not a stage. Not a cafeteria full of forced smiles. Just my office sunlight pouring through glass walls, coffee brewing in the corner, and the low hum of keyboards from a team that actually gave a damn. My assistant, Jordan, poked her head in. Board meeting at 10. Want a breakdown beforehand? I nodded. 10 minutes. She smiled and disappeared, and I looked down at the open tabs on my laptop, new grant applications from underfunded schools, a prototype dashboard for real-time learning analytics, and a Slack thread about a bug we'd fixed overnight. This was the life I built, not because I wanted to show off, but because I refused to stay small. Later that afternoon, I took a walk through our design lab. There were whiteboards covered in marker scrawls, 2 engineers arguing playfully over UX, and someone's kid napping under a desk with headphones on, the kind of chaos that meant something was working. I passed the wall where we kept our only framed photo, not of our product, but of a classroom in rural Montana, kids wearing mismatched hoodies and giant grins, all gathered around a donated Chromebook cart. No one in that photo knew my name, and I liked it that way. I didn't need spotlights, I didn't need applause, because the kid I used to be the one eating lunch alone, wondering if he mattered, he would have looked at this and said, "We made it." That's enough. That's everything. So if you've ever been laughed at for being too quiet, too weird, too different, if you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or made to feel small, build anyway, grow anyway, succeed quietly, if you want to. Because the loudest thing in the room doesn't have to be your voice. It can be your legacy,